The movie starts by showing women from different time periods falling in love with the same man. Over time, each woman realizes something is wrong with him and begins to hate him. In the end, every one of these women is killed brutally. The story moves to the present day. A couple, Liz, an artist, and her boyfriend, Malcolm, a doctor, are driving to his cabin in the woods to celebrate their one-year anniversary. During the drive, Liz thinks about a recent talk she had with her friend Maggie. Maggie jokingly asks if Malcolm is hiding a secret family, but Liz says no and defends him. Maggie then asks if Malcolm wants kids. Liz admits they haven't talked about it and says she never really imagined herself becoming a mother. The couple arrives at the cabin, and Malcolm hangs Liz's painting on the wall. As Liz looks around the place, she notices a cake box and tells Malcolm that someone left him a cake. Malcolm explains that it's from the caretaker and says it's a small tradition, her way of making up for not keeping the cabin in great shape. Later, Liz looks out the window and sees another cabin across from theirs. She asks who lives there. Malcolm tells her it's his cousin, Darren, a rude and unpleasant man, and Malcolm adds that Darren shouldn't bother them, saying he doesn't even see his car outside. That night, Liz and Malcolm sit down for dinner, joking and flirting, but their moment is interrupted when the doorbell rings. Malcolm checks and says it's his cousin Darren. Liz doesn't want guests, but Malcolm lets Darren and his date inside. Liz tries to introduce herself, but Darren ignores her and instead introduces his date, Minka, a model who doesn't speak English. Liz quickly notices that Minka looks confused and weak, almost like she has been drugged. Darren casually says that Minka likes Molly, which confirms Liz's worries. Darren then pulls Malcolm aside to talk privately. While they're gone, Minka tells Liz that the cake tastes bad. Soon, Darren returns, and before leaving, he tells Malcolm that Liz is a keeper and warns him not to lose her. After Darren and Minka leave, Malcolm checks on Liz. She admits that she's upset because Darren treated her like an object. Malcolm apologizes for his cousin's behavior, and Liz forgives him. The mood turns romantic, and they start kissing. But before things go any further, Malcolm insists that Liz try the chocolate cake. Liz tells Malcolm that she does not like chocolate. Malcolm is surprised and asks since when. Liz explains that she has disliked chocolate since she was a child, including the entire time they have been together. Malcolm feels embarrassed and apologizes, admitting he wrongly assumed all women like chocolate. He encourages her to at least try the cake. Wanting to please him, Liz takes a bite, but honestly says it tastes bad. Later at midnight, Liz sleeps. She dreams about the water stream, and in the dream someone points a rifle at her head, so she wakes up scared. After waking, she suddenly wants the chocolate cake she didn't like before. She goes downstairs and we briefly see a shadowy figure standing beside her bed, whereas Liz finds the cake and starts eating it without stopping. While eating, she sees frightening visions of women screaming and badly hurt. The next morning, Minka tries to call an Uber, but there is no signal. Suddenly, she hears a scream and quickly hides behind a tree. Before she can react, an unseen force grabs her and violently drags her away. Meanwhile, Liz sits quietly and sketches the faces of the screaming women she saw in her vision the night before. Malcolm comes in and starts making breakfast. While cooking, he notices that the cake box is empty and asks Liz if she is feeling okay. She simply nods. Malcolm then explains that one of his old patients, Mrs. Portnoy, is coming out of a medically induced coma today, and he is waiting for the hospital to call in case her condition becomes serious. Later, Liz and Malcolm go outside to walk in the woods. Near the stream, Liz suddenly sees a strange vision of a woman dancing between the trees. She then finds a locket in the water, looks at it, and decides to wear it. Soon after, Malcolm gets a call from the hospital. He tells Liz that his patient Mrs. Portnoy is in critical condition, so he has to return to the city. He promises to be back by evening and tells Liz to relax and even open a bottle of wine from the basement. After he leaves, Liz feels uneasy. She drops the locket, and the moment it falls, she feels like she is drowning and cannot breathe, but the feeling disappears just as quickly. Later, Liz calls her best friend Maggie and tells her about the cabin. She says the place feels strange because the only lock in the whole place is on the bathroom door and the windows don't even have blinds. While talking, Liz briefly thinks she sees someone climbing a tree, but when she checks with binoculars, no one is there. Maggie then asks about Malcolm, and Liz says he went to the city for work. Maggie bluntly suggests he might actually be with his wife and calls Liz a side chick. Hurt and annoyed, Liz hangs up. After the call, she looks toward Darren's cabin and notices garbage bags outside. For a moment, she thinks she sees a woman's severed head inside one of the bags, but when she looks again, it has completely disappeared, leaving her shaken and confused. Later, Liz wakes from a nap and drinks water, but suddenly sees Minka sitting inside the cabin. Confused, Liz asks how she got in, and Minka calmly says she is already inside, while a smaller version of her appears too. Feeling dizzy, Liz asks if Darren is with her, and Minka whispers to stay quiet or she will wake the children. When Liz asks where she came from, Minka says the distant past and hints that the children believe Liz is their mother. Liz suddenly wakes up and realizes it was a nightmare. She notices she spilled wine on herself in the couch, so she goes to the basement and gets cleaning supplies. While scrubbing the stain, she hears footsteps upstairs and then a knock on the front door. Liz walks to the door and finds Darren outside, loudly calling for Malcolm and saying he brought drinks. She tells him Malcolm had to rush back to the city for a hospital emergency. Darren looks suspicious and says that doesn't sound like Malcolm, questioning why he would leave Liz alone during their special weekend. He insists she open the door, and after hesitating, Liz lets him in. Darren wanders upstairs and soon asks if she enjoyed the caretaker's chocolate cake and whether it made her feel sleepy. Confused, Liz says it was fine. He offers her a drink and comments that Malcolm was right about her being special, unlike other girls. Feeling uneasy, Liz excuses herself to the bathroom. While looking for her phone, she realizes she left it in the basement. Meanwhile, Darren quietly takes a butcher knife from a drawer and walks toward the bathroom. Liz hears his heavy footsteps approaching. Suddenly, the footsteps stop, and we see that Darren has been killed and beheaded by someone unseen, and his body is dragged away without Liz knowing. After a few minutes, Liz comes out. She goes to the basement to get her phone. She calls Malcolm, but it goes straight to voicemail. She leaves a message telling him that his cousin was there and asking him to call her back as soon as possible. Then she hears music playing outside. She calls Malcolm's name, but no one answers. Suddenly, the garbage disposal turns on by itself and scares her. She quickly switches it off. When she carefully reaches into the sink, she pulls out Darren's watch. As she turns around, she sees an old woman with a bag over her head sitting in a chair. Terrified, Liz screams, but in the next second, the woman disappears and a cake is sitting there instead. Terrified, Liz starts packing her things. She calls Maggie and begs her to come pick her up because something strange is happening. But the call is filled with static, and a distorted voice says, "No, you are the mother." Then the call suddenly cuts off. Later, Malcolm comes home and is shocked to see Liz. Liz tells him she called many times and says there are people in the house, so she wants to leave. Malcolm is confused and asks what she means. Liz angrily explains that an old woman with a plastic bag over her head suddenly appeared, which scared her badly. Malcolm says he doesn't understand and tries to calm her down. Liz then tells him his cousin Darren also came to the house and seemed surprised to see her there. She explains that he left without warning and that she found his watch in the sink. Liz grabs her bag and tries to leave, but Malcolm begs her to stay. She insists she feels sick and says the house feels wrong. Malcolm begs her not to go and asks for half an hour to figure things out. When he asks what he can do, Liz tells him to search the house and make sure everyone is gone. Malcolm agrees and rushes off to check, while Liz remains shaken and desperate to leave. A few minutes later, Malcolm comes back with a bottle of wine and apologizes again for leaving Liz alone at the cabin. Liz jokes that he's a dick, still annoyed, and Malcolm nods, and Liz playfully calls him a liar for saying he'd return at 6, yet arriving much earlier. Malcolm says it was because there was no traffic. Curious, Liz asks about Mrs. Portnoy, but Malcolm, a little drunk and confused, asks, "Who?" and quickly lies that the patient died with her children at her side. Liz senses he is hiding something and goes to the bathroom to be alone. Inside, she tries to gather herself when Malcolm knocks, saying they can talk. Liz confronts him about being married, but he denies it. While in the bathroom, she notices a faint whistle and sees a photograph on the floor showing Malcolm with a woman and 2 children. Malcolm opens the door easily, saying it doesn't really lock, and explains it's just meant to feel hospitable. Liz demands to know who the woman is, but Malcolm says it was a long time ago. When she insists on leaving, Malcolm refuses and asks her to join him in the living room to talk. Liz listens in horror as Malcolm explains that he never wanted her to suffer and that he truly loves her. He says that he only expected her to take a small bite of the chocolate cake to knock her out, but she ate it all, showing him she is different and special. Malcolm talks about the women Liz has been seeing in the house, admitting he doesn't really know what they are. He then reveals that over 200 years ago, when he and Darren were teenagers, they found a pregnant woman trespassing on their father's land, the same land where this cabin stands. She looked just like Liz. They shot her in the leg, dragged her to a pig pen, and left her to die with the child she was carrying. Days later, they returned and discovered she had given birth to strange creatures. Realizing she was a witch, Malcolm killed her, and the creatures offered him and Darren eternal life in exchange for sacrifices. Trembling, Liz begs him to let her go, reminding him that he said he loved her. Malcolm nods and explains that's why he left earlier. There was no emergency at the hospital. He just didn't want to watch her suffer. Calmly, he adds that when Liz dies, he gets to live a little longer, leaving her trembling and crying. Soon, Liz hears a creaking sound coming from upstairs. She rushes to the doors, trying each one, but they are all locked. Her phone won't turn on, and suddenly a few drops of blood fall on the screen. In desperation, she tries to climb down the side of the cabin, but when she sees strange, pale creatures watching her from above, she loses her grip and falls. The story flashes back to when Liz opened the locket earlier. Inside is a photograph of the woman of the witch, the mother of the creature. Meanwhile, Malcolm collects Liz's belongings, adding them to his growing pile of victims, and in a chilling voice, he introduces her to his past victims. Later, Liz slowly wakes up in the basement, surrounded by shifting, pale creatures. One holds the preserved head of the witch. Terrified, Liz whispers, "Who are you?" The creature replies, "We are your children," believing Liz is the returned form of their mother. The creatures surround her, cheerful and longing. Overwhelmed, Liz lets out a shaky laugh as the creatures cry out in joy. Upstairs, Malcolm hears the noise and assumes the creatures are attacking Liz. He turns up the music to block it out, unaware of what's really happening. By morning, Malcolm awakens to find himself hanged upside down and aged overnight. Liz approaches, and he recognizes her only by her voice. He asks weakly what the creatures did, and Liz calmly replies that they asked her to stay. Malcolm insists the land and everything on it belongs to him, but Liz ignores him. She brings him a piece of the chocolate cake he once made her eat. He refuses, but she gently forces him to take a bite. Defeated, Malcolm swallows it, and Malcolm tells Liz he loves her. Liz gently says she's sure he said that to many other girls. Then she pushes Malcolm's head into a vat of thick honey. He suffocates and dies as Liz walks away, and the movie ends. And that wraps up Keeper. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell for more chilling movie stories. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.